Hey Giants fans and football fans, welcome to the Giants Grit, your YouTube fan channel with views and reviews of the New York football Giants. Well, yesterday was the last game of the season. The Giants finished with a 3-14 record, last place in the division. They got the third overall pick in the draft. I never root for losses, and this might be the first time in years, but there were consequences. I mean, the Giants, if they had won and a combination of the other teams playing, they could have picked as low as the ninth pick, and we could have got the best would be the second pick. So we got the third pick. So at this point, finishing 3-14 and getting the third pick of the draft, or 4-13 and getting the 8th or 9th pick, I'll take the former. So still, I would have liked to have seen them play better, considering Philadelphia sat all their starters. They had their whole backup team in, including Saquon Barkley, who was only 100 yards short of Eric Dickerson's rushing record. You only needed 100 yards and 101 to break him, and I'm pretty sure he would have got him. So this morning they did not. They retained GM Joe Schoen and head coach Brian Daboll, which I'm very disappointed in. I wanted them to be let go. I mean, they're responsible for the roster's bad. I mean, you could say it's just as bad as it was when they took over in January of 2022 as it is now. Certainly quarterback is worse. They have the third pick going into this coming draft in 3 months, so we'll see what this regime can do. I guess it's the lesser of two evils. Had they fired Brian Daboll but kept Joe Schoen, they would have had to recruit a head coach who would have to accept the job, kind of knowing that he's playing for a lame duck GM. So I don't think, and if they hired a new GM, let's say in 2026, he'd have a coach working for him that he'd want to bring in his own head coach. And the same thing vice versa. If they kept Brian Daboll, which could have been a possibility, because you're talking about a 2022 coach of the year. I don't think he forgot how to coach. He's just not coaching very well. And I think that the stink has just got on him, and that, his coaching decisions have just been really bad, including with a bad roster. But he had a bad roster in 2022, so I don't know what it is. So, they could have retained him and fired Joe Schoen, and that would have kind of sucked too, because then let's say they have a bad record next year, which I fully expect them to have, and then you're hiring a GM who has to have this head coach. So it wouldn't work well anyway. So they have them both. Hopefully they can improve upon it. If not, then next year we get a new GM and a new head coach. So let me review this game. They lost yesterday, 20-13 to the Eagles. It was 10-0 at the half. Again, the Eagles had all their backups in there. Tim McGee was the quarterback, third stringer for the Eagles, and he passed for 269 yards, no interceptions, had a couple of touchdown passes, and basically looked good doing it. So he tore up mostly the Giants' first string. I mean, the Giants have some guys on IR, and they rotated some players, but they had all their starters in there. Starting with Drew Lock. Drew Lock coming off the best game of his career last year in the win over the Indianapolis Colts. He was 22 of 29 for 138 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. But he's looked like he continued with his Daniel Jones disease, as I like to call it. It's unfortunate, but yeah, he stood in the pocket. He didn't drift as much this time. He got good pass protection, but everything was thrown underneath. I have a hard time believing that guys weren't getting open downfield and at the mid-range, but he was just not throwing it. He threw 10 passes to Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale caught 10 passes out of 11 targets for 43 yards, 4.3 yards a catch. I mean, that's kind of been Wan'Dale's MO for the most part, but usually with 5 or 6 catches, not 10 catches. I mean, it was ridiculous. So anyway, they ran the ball a lot, and I've been asking for them to run the ball a lot more, and they did. However, they almost did it too much, which it was like they were clock killing, especially late in the game. So yeah, Drew Lock basically did not play well. And he had the game finishing interception, his last pass that the Eagles picked off. Moving on to the running backs, as I said, they did run. They ran Tyrone Tracy 14 times for 59 yards, and Devin Singletary ran 7 times for 22 yards, and Eric Ray had 1 carry for 6 yards. That's over 100 yards carrying. Drew Lock had like 3 yards on 2 carries. However, I was a little disappointed with Tracy. He had a nice 16-yard run and a nice 7-yard run. But other than those 2 runs, I was a little disappointed. Even on some positive runs, he looked like he was choosing the wrong hole. There were a couple of times, I can't remember specifically, but I do remember a couple of runs specifically where he looked like he took the wrong hole, or like cut it back when he didn't need to and should have took it outside, and same thing on vice versa. So I don't think he read his blocks very well this game. Not that he would have had that much more, but instead of finishing with 59 yards, maybe he would have had a 70-yard game. So yeah, I'm a little disappointed in that. He pass blocked well, so and he caught 1 pass, I believe. Now, Devin Singletary, I thought, did the opposite. On paper, it doesn't look good. You look 7 carries to 22 yards. That's 3 yards a carry, a little bit over 3 yards a carry, barely. But he made a nice 4th and 1 run where he got hit in the backfield and he bounced off it and ran again. And then he had another short yardage play where he looked like he took a nice cut. He evaded the tackler and got a first down. So Singletary ran better than Tracy did yesterday, for sure. It just didn't show up in the stat sheet. Moving on to the wide receivers, Malik Neighbors, 5 catches for 64 yards, including a 45-yard touchdown catch. And he got the franchise record of 109 catches, which beats Steve Smith's record of 107, set back in 2009. I'm kind of disappointed that they let him play. I mean, letting him catch small, short passes. I've been complaining about this all year, in that, he's taking a beating. I understand he's our best player on offense, maybe next to Andrew Thomas. However, I don't think he's subject. I mean, you want the guy to be there long term. You want this guy to play for you for a decade, and getting him beat up in his rookie year, I feel like is poor coaching and poor personnel decisions. And that goes on Brian Daboll. Sorry, Brian Daboll, but you got to take the blame for that. That's not good. It's like, you want him out there, have him run downfield. Why catching all these, 5-yard hitches and flares? And it's just, I don't know. And it's kind of stupid. As far as Darius Slayton, he had 1 target that he seemed to drop. Eagle could have picked it off. Jalen Hyatt, on the interception, he was the target on that, and he seemed to run the route wrongly, or he was looking over the wrong shoulder. So that's kind of as much, maybe even more his fault than Drew Lock's. But yeah, 0 catches from Slayton and Hyatt. Wan'Dale Robinson, as I mentioned earlier, 10 catches for 43 yards. Not his fault. I think he's one of the Giants' more solid players on the whole roster. Not his fault that they're throwing him the ball when everyone knows he's going to get it on 3rd down. It's 3rd and 5. They have him run 3-yard or 4-yard outs, expecting him to get yak all the time. And, Eagles' 2nd and 3rd stringers tackled very well. So credit to them. I mean, Wan'Dale did break away on a few to get a couple of first downs, but, not as good a game as last game, of course. But I don't put that on Wan'Dale Robinson. I mean, you're expecting a 5'8", 180-pound wide receiver to break tackles like he's a big tight end or something. So it's the play calling, it's the choice of personnel. I mean, I get it. The quarterbacks after Malik, Wan'Dale's the one they trust the most, but just bad play calling. That's why I don't want to go with Brian Daboll. I know he gets guys open in his scheme, but he just doesn't seem to adjust to the personnel as much. I mean, I know you can't turn chicken salad out of chicken poop, but oh gosh, I'm just really not happy with him. So moving on to the tight ends, I thought Daniel Bellinger did a pretty good job of blocking, especially when he was playing that moving fullback position. He had 2 catches for 9 yards, nothing of consequence. Chris Manhertz had a nice 16-yard catch, still blocked well, but that 16-yard catch was really nice. He got a first down, and yeah, he's sneaky. I do want him on the roster next year. I know he's like 32 years old, but he is a good blocking tight end. So, you know, looking again forward to next year. As far as the offensive line, I thought overall the offensive line, good bad scenario. They pass blocked, I thought, very well. There were no jailbreaks. No one knifed in, 0 sacks. So actually one of their better games on the, of course they were going against the Eagles' second and third stringers. If they were in against Philly's first line, I'm sure it would have been a lot different. But again, give credit where credit's due. They pass blocked very well, gave up 0 sacks and very few hurries. Not their fault that all the passes that no deeper passes were called for. The protection was there. It was there. And the pass blocking by the backs, Singletary and Tracy pass blocked well. So, and the tight ends pass blocked well. So why we didn't go further downfield, I don't know. So I have a hard time believing the guys weren't open more. So, I mean, Locke completed 22 passes for 138 yards. That's like 5 yards and under 5 yards average on a completion. So. As far as offensive line, and yeah, unfortunately they ran block poorly. Some of it was on Tracy because, like I said, there were 2 or 3 runs where I felt like he chose the wrong hole. But yeah, overall though, there weren't many holes. Credit to Philadelphia's defensive line. You know, they plugged the gaps, they ran to the ball well, and the Giants' offensive line didn't get much movement in the run game. And part of that, I think, also is JMS was out for the 2nd game in a row. Greg Van Roten was played well, but he's a better pass blocker than run blocker, and it showed though. But there was no inside pressure. There was plenty of room for them to step up. So I do like that about Van Roten, and I'll take a better pass blocker or a better run blocker in this age of the NFL. So as far as the guards play, Jake Kubas got his 3rd start in a row. I thought he was pretty solid. Same thing, didn't run block very well, but pass block very well. And there's something there. He looks solid. He's I like him for the future. I think he could possibly start next year. There's talk of moving Evan Neal to right guard, who did not play due to injury in this game. And I think I'd rather go with Kubas than experiment with putting Evan Neal at right guard. I think Evan Neal is probably just a backup tackle. I don't think he'll be able to play guard. We'll see. Until we see him in a live game, you don't know. But moving forward, I still want to keep Evan Neal at least for his 4th season next year. As far as the other guard, Aaron Stinney started, and he played, again, like the whole line did. Pass blocked okay, didn't run block very well at all. He got replaced in the 2nd quarter by Josh Zuzu. I'm not quite sure why they did it. I think they were just rotating. Zuzu didn't play any better or any worse. Same thing, didn't run block very well, seemed to pass block adequately. But can't get too excited again because they're going against Philadelphia's 2nd and 3rd stringers. And they basically played them to a stalemate, our 1st stringers, although he's a backup player. So, and then on to left tackle, Jermaine Illuminaire. He played, I thought, very well, pass blocking. I mean, he covered his man all game. Drew Lock got very little hits from the blind side. Again, he didn't run block very well, but that's the same thing with the rest of the line. But again, I'll take better pass blocking over run blocking any day, especially in this day and age of the NFL. So that's it for the offensive line. Now moving on to the defense. Now the interior defensive line kind of a broken record, except against the Saints game and when Dexter Lawrence was healthy. They just played poorly. I mean, they only gave up 51 yards rushing this game, but they were adequate against the run. But it seemed like Philly, whenever they needed to, they can convert. Whether it be on 4th down or 3rd down, they were able to run. They only ran for 50-something yards, 51 yards, but it seemed like they were running better than that. However, in the passing game, again, Tim McGee got 269 yards passing. He was hitting guys. He hit 8 different receivers. So he passed the ball around, spread it out nicely. So there was 0 push from the defensive line. So Eli Garcia, Eli Chapman, Jordan Riley, they all had a couple of tackles each. Boogie Basham played a little better, but fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, he did have an offsides penalty when the Eagles late in the game had a 3rd and long, and the Giants were trying to get the ball back when they're only down by 4. So he gave them a whole new set of downs. So I guess you could say he had a good game, bad game, because who knows, they may have won and they'd be picking 8th or 9th in the draft. So, but yeah, again, still overall, I mean, I don't think none of these guys are starters, and they shouldn't be. Who knows what the Giants are going to keep moving forward. We have to draft interior defensive linemen. We have to sign them in free agency this offseason, no doubt about that. Next to quarterback, it's the biggest need. Moving on to the edge rushers, I thought Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau had okay games. Not good, not bad games. Brian Burns was active. He had 5 tackles. He was decent against the run. He had a half sack that he shared with Thibodeau in the 4th quarter. But it would have been nice to see him get the double-digit sacks. I'm happy with him this year. I mean, this year was a disaster, and he still had overall a good year. He's paid to be a great player, but he only had a good year. But with Thibodeau missing 5 games on the other side of him, Dexter Lawrence missing like 7 games, and crap at the defensive line next to him, I mean, I guess expectations were to be, it's hard for him to be getting double-digit sacks, when you only got average players and below average players around you, and your best player, Dexter Lawrence, misses the last 7 games, and your pass rusher opposite you also missed 5 games. So it's tough for Brian Burns to put up great numbers, but he's a very good player. He's played like a great player. I still have high hopes for him going, and he's obviously one of the building blocks moving forward. And had a good game, 4 tackles, 1.5 sacks. He had a terrible first half. He almost looked like he was going through the motions, but he picked it up in the second half. He got good pass rush. He was good against the run. Overall, his year, it's disappointing because he missed 5 games, but again, it's hard. Everything else is going bad. I'm fine with Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns going next year as their edge rushers. I wouldn't be opposed to getting Abdul Carter from Penn State simply because he's, just a great player. And, that's how the Giants won Super Bowls, with having multiple pass rushers in there. So, but that's another story. That's for an NFL draft preview video, which I'll be shooting again next week. Tavon Fox backed up. He had a couple of tackles, looked pretty active. So now, as far as off the ball linebackers, Ty Sumner backed up. We got Devontae Johnson, who looked good this preseason, finally got a start. He had 11 tackles and looked good doing it. So moving forward, I hope they. He's definitely going to make the roster next year, that, barring injuries. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what he does. Darius Moasu started like his 5th game in a row. Looked okay. I mean, he had 8 tackles, nothing spectacular, nothing bad. He got beaten coverage, but they all kind of did. And Ty Sumner, who got hurt last week, he did play. He did get some part-time playing. He picked up 4 tackles, and he looks tough. I don't expect him to make the team next year, though, because of his age. But he's still adequate backup. Now, as far as moving on to the secondary, The corners, I was very disappointed with the corners. They were going up against Philadelphia's, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth receivers. And again, McGee was able to complete passes to 8 different receivers. So yeah, disappointed with the secondary. As far as the corners are concerned, Deonte Banks had like his 4th straight disappointing game. He's too talented to give up on, and obviously he's still going to be here next year, but he can't be relied upon to be a number 1 corner. He's a number 2 corner, and I think moving forward they should look at him as so. In the upcoming draft, who knows, Travis Hunter or Will Johnson, if they don't go quarterback, might be the guy they get. As a matter of fact, that's what I kind of expect, again, if they don't get quarterback. Or choose not to choose it, or if they trade down, I think they're looking at Will Johnson or Travis Hunter. If they don't trade down, they'd have to use the 3rd pick to get Travis Hunter. I doubt if he goes past the 3rd or 4th pick. But not to get off track, Cordell Flott was limited. He had a couple tackles. Deonte Banks had 1 tackle, and again had missed tackles, continued to look lost in coverage. So again, 4th straight horrible game from Devontae Banks. Cordell Flott didn't play well, but he was limited. Adoree Jackson had his typical quiet game, but had a couple tackles and didn't look bad. Drew Phillips looked good. He had 4 or 5 tackles, and looked good doing it as usual. Very pleased with him. He had a nice pass defense also. So yeah, moving forward, Drew Phillips is definitely a building block. And David Wilson, he played well. I'm shocked and pleased that this young player that they just picked off the street, I think he's someone who can definitely compete for a depth position next year. That's it for the corners. Now, as far as the safeties, Jason Pinnock had a quiet game. He did have a nice blitz early in the first quarter when the Eagles had to settle for a field goal thanks to his pass rush on 3rd down. Other than that, though, he gave up a lot of passes in coverage. They're playing some zone in there, so I'm sure it looks like he was responsible but I'm sure it wasn't all on him, but he's what you see on the TV view. So Dane Belton had like his 3rd straight good game. Not as good as his last game, but he had 5 tackles, tackled well. He was in there coverage, kind of the same thing. He looks like he was the one who was beat on coverage, and maybe he was on some zone, but again, he looks solid. I think he's an excellent backup player, but just okay as a starter. But again, you could get by with him as a starter, and certainly the Giants have. He's not the reason why the Giants finished 3-14, that's for sure. And he had a nice pass defense late in the game, but he kind of cut in front of Drew Phillips, who would have had an interception. But obviously Belton didn't know that, but nice play by Belton. So, and Anthony Johnson, number 23, the safety, he got some playing time in there, and he had 3 tackles. So, and looked good doing it too. So, if we lose Jason Pinnock, I think we're kind of okay there with Belton, and then when Tyler Nubin comes off of IR, and then maybe Anthony Johnson, not to mention who they sign in free agency and who they draft in the upcoming draft. So, and that's it. And special teams, Gano was 2 for 2 on his field goal attempts and got his only extra point attempt. Punter Jillian, he had 3 punts or 4 punts, averaged 40 yards a punt. Kickoff coverage was not good. They only had 1 kickoff coverage, and they gave up a 51-yarder, so that was not good on them. But other than that, specials was okay. Returner Smith Marset, his 1 return he got for 26 yards, so that was good. So that concludes the review on the players and the units of the last game of the season. Again, this morning they retained Brian Daboll as head coach and general manager Joe Schoen. I'm not happy about that, but nothing I can do about it. And we'll see. Next week I'll have a review. I won't have a game to review. I'll talk about my thoughts on upcoming free agency, upcoming in the NFL draft, what I think they should do coaching-wise, because I don't expect them to maintain all of the staff. I think Shane and Daboll have to let some people go and bring some people aboard to make it look like other than that they're making as many moves as possible to better this team. So hang in there, Giants fan. The offseason is here. I'm actually looking forward to the offseason because the on-season product is so terrible. So please like and subscribe. Please check out my video next week. Again, I'll have that preview of what I think the Giants should do in this offseason. Thanks again, Giants fans. Have a good one.